Evening. Hey, John. I'm good with that. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right, considering the fucking shit that is YouTube and the crap that we've been put through this week.
Oh,
Um,
they're such bastards.
oh, fucking hell, mate. I can understand why Stephen Molyneux went to Rumble and said fuck it. You
Mm.
know, because I think I was looking at Rumble again today because we had a channel on Rumble, but there was a link between the two things. So every time you put something up, you it would go to Rumble automatically, but then YouTube disabled the API so you couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah,
And now
but
they've
that's and they
stolen,
started it.
and now
Yeah, gone.
they've stolen August's money and September's money that I'd made. So I'd made 98 quid in August, which they won't pay me now because they ceased to monetize the channel on the 14th of September. So that means they keep August money because they don't normally pay out until the 23rd. So they've actually shown me the invoice. So it says minus £98. So basically, you get fined for your channel getting demonetized. So not only do you not get to make any more money, they take money off you that you'd already made. And for them. Because remember, I only get 30% of what we make. You know, YouTube gets 70%. The big man takes 70% in this case. So they've stolen that money, and now they're stealing September's 14 days as well, which was 112 quid. So, yeah, there, I'm 200 quid down for
It just
making shorts. And I think I know what I've done wrong. I made a short, and even though I put all the effort into it, and I changed everything around, and I reframed it for portrait, and I reframed it between shots, so I had to cut it into little bits. And then I had to add subtitles because nobody can understand them because it was Burniston. Even after doing all that, that's not substantial. That's not a substantial change. That doesn't make it original enough. So the shorts, I have to bin all the shorts, mate. It's the shorts that have done it.
what a nightmare.
So the shorts have gone crazy, and I think that's what happens. If your channel does well, right, it triggers a bot to go, well, that channel's doing awfully well all of a sudden. It must be breaking the law. So
I know. I
the
noticed
YouTube
that when
law.
yeah, I noticed that when I turned on ad sharing on my Twitter account. Um, just mainly for shits and giggles. I'm not
Yeah.
out to make any money out of
Yeah.
Twitter. I just thought maybe the subscription would pay for itself, and it kind of does, but I noticed that as soon as I turned that on, my engagement actually dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they want their people that are approved of the what is it? Polly calls them the new narrative network, which is the
Yeah.
alternative media that are approved by the system
Yeah.
somehow, and then the actual system media, and everybody else is basically just put into a little box of poverty.
Yeah. 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 I mean, you get so far, and then yeah, I have to remove all the shorts, and I can't reapply for monetization because my appeal got rejected. So I can't reapply for monetization until the 15th of December. So
Ugh,
it used to be a month, but now they make you wait 3 months. They're just arseholes. I mean,
yeah,
there's no fucking excuse for that's not business. It's not a business decision because the thing is, well, it maybe is a business decision because they don't lose any money here. In fact, they make more.
but I know plenty. The thing is that there are plenty of channels that have like Bill Hicks
Oh
videos
yeah,
and
yeah,
all sorts of stuff. It's just it. This is the problem with all of this censorship and stuff. It's so selective,
yeah.
and you have freedom of speech, but only the speech that they agree with.
You don't have freedom of
That's the
speech.
thing.
You've never had freedom of
Yeah.
speech, mate. Never. Nobody's ever had freedom of speech. We've never had freedom of speech because even when you're talking about, I mean, you even see it with us, and we think we've got freedom of speech, but we don't because we're dancing around subjects, aren't we? We have to talk in code. So
Absolutely,
I
and I
mean,
mean
it's
we have to
fucking ridiculous. They treat you
yeah,
like children, and you're meant to
absolutely.
be an adult, and they say you're in the partner program. That's not a fucking partnership. No, it's an abusive relationship. That's what it is.
Absolutely right.
So the thing is, people, if you want to support me, go to Ko-fi. Fuck YouTube. Because really, you've given me more money on Ko-fi than I've ever had off YouTube. So, and I appreciate the people that do support me on Ko-fi, like Amy and whatever,
YouTube
and,
are wankers anyway. Don't give
and
them a cut.
and Julie and Dreadeye and all those people and Mark Nelson and people like that. They all give me good support, and I really appreciate it. But if anyone wants to drop me anything, drop me it on Ko-fi. And remember, if you do it during this live stream, a computerized voice will come on and read out your message, as long as it's suitable, because there is an extensive block list. You can't go calling people bad names, So,
Well,
apart from
means we
that,
shouldn't start talking about the Prime Minister then.
we can talk about anything we want, mate. But yeah, so Amy asked, "Where's Ben?" Well, Ben's kind of stepped away from this channel. He wants to go play in Fantasyland, so he's just doing his Disneyland stuff. Yeah, and you know what? I think. I mean, I don't blame him, because I think he. Maybe scare's the wrong word, but when all that crap was kicking off and people were getting the jail for saying things on YouTube or for saying things on Twitter, I think it kind of, I think it kind of got to him, But the link for
A lot of
Ko-fi's,
people.
the link for Ko-fi's right in front of you, Julie. Support us at kofi.com/chasing descent. Right in the bottom of the screen. Can you see it, darling? Can you? Or do I need to make it? Do I need to make it more obvious? Because I do know that most of the audience that watch the live streams are of an older generation. So make sure you've got your glasses on.
You'll attract a lot more bees with honey than vinegar, don't you?
Yeah. Look, mate, do I look? I mean, really. I mean, I think it's too late for the honey. Don't you think?
You could pass for a honey bear or something. I don't know.
A honey bear, honey badger.
Yeah, well, yeah, one of them.
Oh, bite me, says Amy. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Julie when you said link for Ko-fi. Oh, they're getting back at me. Anyway, thank you, Ed. Right. So apart from that, oh God, what else has happened this week?
Just. Do you really want to go there?
No, we can. Are you coming tomorrow night? Are we doing all in?
Yeah, I think I can do all in tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow night, mate. So if you see any adverts on this show, they're nothing to do with me. I can't turn them off. Can't turn them on, but I can't turn them off if there are adverts on it. Sorry. Right. Let's dig in then. We're going to talk about Cecil John Rhodes, I believe, a man that you keep banging on about. So it's about time you actually gave us some information.
Well, yeah, because this particular show had actually been prepared a while back, and we just kind of never circle back to it. But
yeah,
it's also one that's a little bit. In a way, it's kind of niche, and in a way, it's kind of not, because his legacy and his influence extends right up to today. Right, I mean, right up to Joe Biden's freaking cabinet, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we've got some slides, so if you want to start with the slides,
just showing people what I'm drinking tonight. Sorry.
I don't want to make it a big, long, boring history lesson.
Well, you will.
Well, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try not to.
I'm
sure
you'll.
I'm sure you'll make things more interesting for the audience anyway. So it's fun.
Next slide, please. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, first slide, and as usual, the slide ordering is probably going to be screwy. So
oh yeah,
we're going to have
doubt.
the usual fun of jumping around.
No doubt.
Just a little bit of background. Cecil Rhodes was a British / South African. I don't know if entrepreneur. I think a better word for him is probably an oligarch.
I like
but
that.
he was, and if you've ever bought your missus a diamond ring, you most likely bought the diamond from De Beers or someone who was selling De Beers diamonds,
Yeah.
because De Beers is the largest. Essentially, De Beers has a monopoly on the world's diamond trade. And it's actually quite interesting because the whole thing is a bloody con, because diamonds are actually a lot more, um, uh, there's a lot more of them than we think. They're not as rare as we think they are.
Yeah.
And De Beers actually has warehouses full of diamonds, and they artificially keep the price high, and they use the marketing and all of that kind of thing. But actually, diamonds, you can find diamonds in quite a lot of different parts of the world. But as soon as you do, the whole thing gets jumped on and monopolized, because De Beers, they
Mhm.
have vast amounts of money, and their whole aim is not just to uh, produce and sell diamonds, but to actually control the price as well.
Hold on, hold on. Shalini's got something to say in the chat. She said, "Nope, no diamonds. Oh, no,
No
no,
diamonds,
no
no
diamonds.
diamonds.
Oh, but
Shit.
Shalini,
I
Vaughn,
think I think
get this lady a diamond.
Vaughan, you're really slacking, mate.
Yeah,
It's like,
get
I
that
think,
lady a
I'm not
diamond.
sure if it's still the case, but it used to be true that a gentleman had to spend 1 month's salary on the diamond engagement ring for his lady, and that
Yeah,
was actually De Beers, very clever De Beers marketing propaganda.
of course it was.
Anyway, so Rhodes, essentially, he and his business partner Charles Rodd founded De Beers in 1888.
Mm-hmm.
But Rhodes originally arrived in, he was born in 1853 in England. But his family sent him to Southern Africa for health reasons. He was a very sickly, poorly child, and his,
Okay.
I mean, ill health was something that.
So,
But it was,
what's the health advantage of going to Southern Africa? Just as a matter of
well,
interest, apart from the fact that there are multiple animals that could kill you, there's a chance you get malaria in Southern Africa. Yeah,
but it's the weather mainly.
the
I
weather,
mean,
the weather's
it's
better. Yeah, okay.
no,
They
I
could have
think.
sent him to fucking Brighton.
Well, strangely enough, my father went to Africa in the 60s,
Yeah,
and the way he tells the story is that it actually was the weather that was the final straw that drove him out of England, because
yeah.
he was sloshing around in the slush in Birmingham in about December of 1966 or 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he just thought to himself, "There's got to be something better than this." And he saw an advert for a hotel company looking for staff in Africa, and off he went. So the weather is the reason that people leave.
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
yeah. I mean, just as an aside, I before I moved to Hong Kong, I used to get bronchitis every winter. Every winter in Scotland, I would suffer terribly from bronchitis. And remember, this was before. This was in the dark old days, the old days before the internet, when we used to cluster around
there was
a
dinosaurs running
yeah,
around and
a solitary
cavemen.
a solitary coal fire that heated the whole house. And if you were really lucky, like we were kind of middle class because my dad was in the Navy, but so we had a paraffin heater in the hall, which gave a little bit of heat to the hall. And that you had single glazed windows, so you used to scrape the ice off the inside in the morning, right? You didn't have continental quilts, as we used to call them, or duvets now. You had blankets and usually coats as well, because it get that freaking cold. So, there was no central heating. So I used to suffer really badly every winter. And then we went to Hong Kong, and we arrived in Hong Kong in November. So we left Scotland. Well, we flew from Brize Norton, and it was sub-zero when we left. It was like -1 or something because everything was all frozen. So we left Brize Norton. We stopped over in Cyprus, where we had to get the windscreen replaced. So we were there for an extra hour, right? But that was fine because it was nice and warm. It was like 20, 22, 25 degrees or something. It was lovely there. An hour to replace a windscreen as well. That's not bad going, but that's the RAF. It wasn't any of your commercial shit, right? So then we jumped back on the plane and stopped over at Gan in the Indian Ocean, which is basically just an airstrip, to refuel, because we had to fly around the bottom of Vietnam because the Vietnam War was ongoing at that point. And then we flew into Hong Kong, arriving that evening, or, I think it was like 24 hours later, or like 18 hours later. Um, and we arrived in Hong Kong and stepped out the plane, and it was 33 degrees, and humidity was like 98%. It was like walking into a steam room. And I never had bronchitis again, ever.
I can imagine that
Just
sort of
cured it.
shock to the system. Yeah,
Yeah,
but that's, I mean, it's the cold and the damp and the
yeah.
crappy insulation and the crappy buildings, and just look, we're just going to start getting ourselves depressed at the state of the country. So let's
Right,
venture
crack on,
back in time
crack on.
to 1870, where we see a 17-year-old
Uh,
Cecil Rhodes
get any
arriving
slides for
in.
me yet, other than the first one?
Yeah, just slide one. Sorry.
Slide two. Oh,
Oh
right.
yeah, nah,
Is that a Hoover?
yeah.
Oh, no, it's a rifle.
No, that's the only this is the only two half decent pictures I could find of a young-ish Cecil Rhodes.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, he ended up in Kimberley, which was the main diamond mining area,
Yeah.
where years previously, I think it's either two farmers or two farm lads had found this great big shiny stone in a field, and shown it to an adult, and it turned out to be a sodding great big diamond. And that was all she wrote. And I mean, Kimberly, if you just jump to slide 5. I mean, go through slides 3 and 4, because that's just Rhodes at various stages of his life. But if you look at slide 5,
It's a hole.
that's Kimberly. Yeah, that's a giant sodding diamond mine hole in the ground. It's one. I think it's actually there's. I think it's. I might be wrong, but I think it might have a record for being the deepest open pit mine or
Yeah.
something. Anyway, or it's. I mean, it's ridiculously huge.
Did they,
Um,
did they drive down that?
yeah,
Yeah.
the trucks would drive. They drive in a circle
Yeah. Right.
um,
So,
down.
so I need to say, I need to go briefly to the chat room because Amy's, no, not Amy, sorry. Bratmate says, I never trusted anyone called Cecil. And I'm like, I've never fucking known anyone called Cecil. And Amy has backed that up with, I've never met anyone called Cecil. Yeah, I mean, have you
I think
ever
it's
met
funny.
anyone called Cecil?
No,
No.
no, but I think it's one of those old-fashioned names that just kind of basically fell out of fashion. And I'm sure if you scour the halls of Harrow and Eton and
Oh, yeah,
Oxford and
sure.
all these tough places,
Oh, yeah.
there's probably some poor little bastard out there that's been called Cecil by his parents, and he probably gets bullied every day of his life for it.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so they initially, Rhodes and his business partner Charles Rudd, they had a bit of success in the diamond fields, but where he really made his mark wasn't so much in the actual mining of diamonds, but the consolidation of mining companies and bringing um, essentially he and his partner bought other mines,
Mm-hmm.
put them together, and then used the resources from that to then buy more, and eventually came to monopolize and dominate the local diamond industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, the official history says he was a shrewd businessman and stuff, but I mean, he was basically very ruthless.
He
He
was,
never married.
yeah, and he was
He
lucky.
never,
He was in the right place at the right time.
yeah, and I mean,
Yeah,
he had backing too, because
yeah,
I mean, he primarily Rothschilds, and NM Nathaniel Rothschild of NM
hmm,
Rothschilds in London was one of his main backers. So I mean, it's the usual suspects.
yeah,
Um, But using his growing wealth and influence, Rhodes entered Cape Town politics with the goal of advancing British imperial interests. More importantly, he wanted to expand British territories across all of southern Africa. And he had this dream of the Cape to Cairo, which is slide 7.
slide
Um,
7, Cape to Cairo. Oh,
and
this is like an early version of China's Belt and Road, then.
no, well,
Well, yeah,
no.
kinda. I
it's
mean,
yeah, but
except localized to Africa. Yeah.
well, apart from the fact that that China's not actually invading the territories and kind of displacing local populations and just
Well, I think there might
fighting
be.
local tribes, and I
Well,
mean
well,
they
okay, they're not fighting, but they're kind of bringing in their own workers
um
and displacing many of the local population.
yeah, I
They just do it
don't think it's
peacefully.
comparable.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a modern way. It's
Well,
a modern
well,
way.
they but the thing is that they have loads of money, and I'd rather that a country like China spent its money building roads and bridges and dams and shit for other people rather than dropping bombs on people. Simple as.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, right? But ultimately, the the end goal is the same. It's control.
Um, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, they go about it different ways. One looks better than the other, but ultimately, the end goal is much the same.
well, that's the end goal of people generally.
Mm-hmm.
Although,
Yeah.
I mean, with China putting its
What?
influence into BRICS, I mean, BRICS is not a one-man band.
Ooh. Hold
BRICS
on.
is, I mean,
From Melton
BRICS.
Mushroom.
The
Oh,
whole point of what
stop.
they're
Stop. From Melton Mushroom, we had a donation. Why did it not read out? Why did it not read out? But thank you, Britmate. So Britmate has dropped me 30 quid. Thanks very
oh,
much,
that's
mate.
very nice.
You are a
That's
star.
Thank you, Brit, mate.
Thank you. Right.
Bless him.
Sorry. And I will. I don't understand why that didn't read out because it should have. It's enabled. But anyway, thank you, and I'll give you another shout out next tomorrow night for doing that. Just because I can. Right. Let me see if. In fact, just keep talking, and I'm just going to
Okay.
see if I
Well,
can see what's
despite
happened
what
to
John
coffee.
says about China's Belt and Road Initiative and what Cecil Rhodes was doing being the same thing,
Yeah.
they kind of weren't, because Rhodes had his own private army, and
Oh,
what
sorry.
Rhodes did was essentially cut a path of conquest through southern Africa, killing large numbers of people at the same time,
Mhm.
and also creating political structures that deprived indigenous people of any kind of political say at all. Hence, you ended up with apartheid, and I mean there was segregation in places like Zimbabwe and, well, what's now Zimbabwe, what used to be called Rhodesia, and then before that it was part of the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which was Northern Rhodesia, which is now Zambia, Nyasaland, which is Malawi, and Southern Rhodesia, which was then Zimbabwe afterwards. Um, and I don't know if John's got a
Right.
slide. Yeah,
Wait a
you
minute.
can see Rhodes's vision,
From someone
and
Right.
we have to remember
8003.
that this is a period
Right.
when
Right. Hold on.
European.
Hold on.
Oh,
Stop. Sorry to stop you. Right. So that did work. I don't know why that happened there, but anyway, Kofi's come up with Kofi did come up with a thingy that somebody had dropped in, some dosh, and it wasn't Britmate, it was Melted Mushroom. Right. So, and I had been drinking earlier. You're right. But I had a little nap, so I thought it was okay. But yeah, you were drinking early last week, weren't you?
yes, that was Friday.
Yeah.
Was it
Right.
Friday or Thursday?
Right. So,
I did have a couple of beers with my curry earlier.
when did I not drink early? Casting the nasturtiums there. You had a curry today, no?
Yeah, no, I had a curry night with my friend in Shoreham,
Today?
who I go and see. Yeah,
Lovely.
this evening before the show.
Weather was lovely today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It
Yeah.
was quite windy down here, but it's been really nice.
Okay, right. Apologise for that, people. But yeah, everything seems to be working, so I don't know why it didn't happen. Oh, Militant's on catch up. That's what's wrong. He didn't do it live.
From
Yay!
Dread. Bingo 20.
Where's Dread Eye just dropped me 20 quid? Woo! This is making up for the YouTube disaster. Thank you, Dread Eye. You know you don't need to, though, mate. You don't need to. Fucking hell, man. Oof. Thank you. Right. Okay.
So,
Carry on. Sorry.
Rhodes essentially had this dream of extending British influence all the way to the Cape, from the Cape to Cairo. And the one thing about Rhodes that you always have to bear in mind is that he was a British imperialist. He wanted he wanted the sun to never set on the British Empire.
Yeah.
And there is actually there is a funny joke about that. Do you know why the sun never set on the British Empire?
I don't know, mate.
Because God would not trust the British in the dark.
You know, I kind of didn't want the sun to set in the British Empire either.
Anyway, so Rhodes created the British South Africa Company, which had its own. I mean, like the British East India Company, he had its own private army. They conducted wars, raids, and essentially seized control of mineral wealth, territory, natural resources, the usual sort of colonial thing.
Yeah,
Lots
yeah,
of land
like,
theft from natives, and
much like America does today.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, but actually, America is part of this story, but we're going to come to that in a little while. Now, eventually, Rhodes consolidated British imperial control over a very large chunk of southern Africa.
Mm-hmm.
The other bits were German and French, like Namibia in southern Africa was controlled by the Germans.
Yeah.
And then we got to the Second Boer War, which was against the Transvaal Republic. And if we go to, we have some plucky Dutch.
So I'm not 100% up on South African history. But so the Boers were Dutch settlers?
Yeah, a mixture of Dutch, German, French, Huguenot, but primarily Dutch.
Yeah.
Because Boer in Dutch means farmer.
Okay, right. And they settled in the Transvaal, did they?
Well, no, the Dutch were the original colonists.
Right, so they were all over South Africa.
And it was the first Boer War that they were driven to the north, effectively. And it was originally because around Cape Town was what was called the Cape Colony. And that used to be Dutch. And the British essentially took over, and you had Dutch-British wars, etc. It was all, without going into lots of detail, it ended up being controlled by the British, and the Dutch settlers moved further inland.
Right.
And if you go to the north of South Africa, you have places like the Orange Free State and stuff like that. Now, Orange Free State, that name in itself says something, because the House of Orange is the Dutch royal family.
William of Orange, yeah.
Yeah. And they had various wars, and the Boer Wars were essentially between the British and the Dutch settlers. And they were brutal. I mean, if you look at slide 13, we've got some plucky Boers there. But it was during the Boer War that the British first invented the concentration camp.
Hey, look, that guy looks like, that's Matt Damon with the bandolier. Look at it. That's Jason Bourne.
Yeah,
it freaking is.
Anyway,
and that's a critical drinker with the goatee.
Well, the Boers, I mean, they were kind of, you have to hand it to them for holding off the British, and actually, yes, they got beaten in the end.
Yeah,
but they gave the British a bloody good hiding in the process. And I mean, the British behaved despicably in a lot of cases, because we invented the first concentration camp during the Boer War, and they rounded up all of the Boer women and children and chucked them in a concentration camp, because it was basically the Boers were essentially just a guerrilla movement.
Right, okay, so we're treating them like terrorists.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
okay. that was how they were. That was how they were seen and how they were treated. But through hook and crook and everything else, the British did that. The British essentially ended up with control over the whole territory. And I mean, you had pockets, the Boers kind of, because South Africa's huge. So we're talking about very long distances, and it was back in the days of horses and carts and trains and stuff like that. So, but the thing about Rhodes is that he's interesting because he died at the age of 48. He never married. And this is where the story gets really interesting
Yeah.
because he left, and I mean the rest of his life is essentially raping and pillaging. If you go to slide 11, you can see, well, slides 10 and 11
Uh-huh.
give you an idea of there are some cartoons portraying Rhodes in that period.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't, I mean, he wasn't seen in a particularly positive light.
Was
He
this
was,
by
I mean, he was very
one of your predecessors that made this?
if you go down to the next one.
Yeah.
So, and
He wasn't very
again, I
broad.
mean, there's a certain section of the population, particularly white Southern Africans, let's
Yeah.
say, white Zimbabweans, white South Africans. There's a real reverence for Rhodes still
Really?
in that. Yeah, he's seen as a builder and a visionary and someone who created. I mean, there's not many people who have a country girl named after them, and he had
Well, that's true.
like two.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it in a way that would be politically correct. But history is what it is. We're not here to necessarily judge, just to kind of lay the facts out and let people make up their own minds. I mean, I have my opinions, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's good and bad. I mean, if we go to slide 6, was one of the good things that he did in this world, which was one of the most spectacular railway bridges on the planet, which is the
it's
Victoria
pretty
Falls
impressive.
Railway Bridge.
Yeah.
Which
It's a bit scary, isn't it? It's
well,
made of wood.
I mean, it's the Zambezi River. And I mean, the river itself at that point, when it goes over the falls, is about a mile and a bit wide.
Yeah, wow.
So it's not an easy river to stick a bridge over,
and it's
certainly not in those days. But
wow. Yeah, that's a bit scary.
and you can do old-fashioned lunchtime steam train buffet journeys on that railway. It's brilliant.
Okay. Cool.
So when he died in 1902, he didn't have any children, but he left an exhaustive. It was one of the. I mean, I don't know how you could actually think about leaving a will this big behind, but it was 7 parts, and it was very political. And the entire aim of Rhodes's will was to direct his fortune to advance British imperial interests. His executor was Lord Alfred Milner, who is someone that people may have heard about. We've got the Milner Group.
And to do with hats? No.
Say that again.
Anything to do with hats? No.
Hats? No.
You know, being a Milner? No.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one of his
past or something.
Distant descendants was, but they were. I mean, they were sort of hand in glove, and it's almost. I did actually check to see if there was any rumors that Rhodes might have been a homosexual or something like that because of not having married, and he had this relationship with Milner. They were very much of one mind, and Rhodes is once reported to have said, "Oh, where are we? Not sure if I can find that quote here." But he basically said, if Milner says it, then you can assume that I'm thinking the same thing as Milner.
Yeah.
But his entire will was essentially dedicated to not just expanding the British Empire, but bringing the United States back into the British Empire. And so to that effect, Milner essentially administered it along those lines. And the Milner Group has very, very shady history relating to World War I. There's a documentary that James Corbett did, which you can find on his website, called The World War I Conspiracy. And if any of this stuff that we're talking about this evening is of interest,
I think I might have seen that.
I'd recommend people watch that documentary.
I just need to interrupt you briefly. We've had another donation from Amy in Dystopia. Thank you, Amy. You didn't need to do that. You did one earlier as well. So thank you. Really appreciate it. I would have loved to have tried your moonshine, but that just wouldn't have made it through customs. No way. But yeah, maybe I'll get over to Kentucky.
Why wouldn't moonshine make it through customs?
Because it's freaking illegal.
No, yeah, you couldn't send it through the post, but you could actually bring it in a suitcase, but that would require Amy to come over.
Hold on. There's a guy just been lifted at Stansted Airport for trying to smuggle, what was it, £600,000 worth of weed.
What?
Yeah. We might talk about it tomorrow.
600. Oh, dear.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Amy.
Anyway.
Appreciate it.
Bless
And
you. Thank you, Amy.
if people want it read out, you've got to be live when you do it. You've got to be up to date on the stream. You can't be run behind. So remember, and click that little live. See, if you go down to the bottom of your YouTube page, there'll be a thing that says live. If it doesn't say live with a red thing on it, then you're not up to date, right? So you need to be up to date. So click on the live, and that'll bring you right to the end. And then when you make the donation, it should be read out. But anyway, apart from that, carry on. Sorry, Ed.
No, that's fine.
You know.
Thank you guys for all the donations. The money will go to John. I'm not here for the money, but I think it's nice for him.
Amy,
Make him smile because he's had a bad day.
Yeah, I've had a bad week. Amy says I'm going to get arrested at Heathrow. Yeah, you probably will. Anyway, right, carry on, Ed. Sorry.
It's all right. So one of the things that Rhodes's will established, I mean, as I said, there's connections to the Milner Group and World War One, but that's really what deserves its own show. And James Corbett has made a much better fist of it than I ever could anyway. But the Milner Group was very, very involved in the shadows.
Should have been moving
around
the slide.
Not just. Well, it wasn't so much the
actual
slide? Assassination. No. Milner, yeah, there's a slide of Milner. Where is he? Slide 17.
Okay, right. Oh, he looks quite severe.
Yeah, no, he's not he's a very serious looking dude. But the thing that they created, or that he created, was the Rhodes Scholarship Program. And that brings foreign students to study at Oxford with the goal of spreading British, in inverted commas, values and appreciation of the empire abroad. The scholarships were part of Rhodes's vision for the English-speaking race, uniting global in strength and influence. And that's all of the official blah, blah, blah. Now,
I think Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar.
Oh, yeah. If you go to the next slide, slide 18.
Oh, yeah, right.
We've got.
Oh, there you go. There's a fresh-faced Bill there, front and center, isn't there? Very fresh-faced indeed.
And I mean, we're talking about some very important people. We've got bankers, Edward Grigg, colonial administrator Leo Amory, Geoffrey Dawson, John Buchan. I mean, the list of important Rhodes scholars is very long and stretches right up to this day, because Joe Biden's, because the Milner Group also created the Royal Institute for International Affairs. That's kind of an offspring of the Round Table groups. And it's not just these organizations. The reason why Rhodes's legacy is so important right up to today is because it created the networks. Because you have to think, I mean, we all love to talk about the conspiracy theories and the fact that it's who's controlling the world, and the Committee of 300 and the Black Nobility and Jesuits and
who
all
are
of
them,
this kind of thing.
basically, yeah.
Well, the thing is that they're all connected together. And one of the things that Rhodes's will established and what Milner built was this network that it feeds on itself, because they've got the Rhodes scholarships. Sorry, there's a car alarm going off. I don't know if people can.
Was that your side?
Background. Yeah.
Wow.
It will hopefully stop soon. I hope it's not too distracting for people. It kind of is for me. Anyway, the point is that Rhodes's influence extends right up to the Biden White House. Through the council. If you look at the members of the Council on Foreign Relations, as you said, Bill Clinton was a Rhodes Scholar. I mean, I could literally start listing their names out and we'd be here for hours of boring names. But the point with Rhodes, and the reason that I wanted to cover him, and the reason I think it's an interesting rabbit hole, is because of the Rhodes scholars. Now, the Milner Group doesn't still exist, and I'm not sure if you've heard of an author called Carol Quigley, who's responsible for some pretty heavyweight conspiracy theory books. But one of the books that he wrote is called The Anglo-American Establishment, which is where he researched a lot of this stuff. And the thing about the group is that because
So who wrote this book?
Rhodes,
Milner?
no, Carol Quigley.
Oh,
Carol, as in
right.
as in the male spelling of the name.
Right. Okay.
Which is really, why would you want to call your son Carol? I mean,
why would you call your boy Marion? Huh?
Well, or Leslie.
Yeah. Well, Leslie. Yeah. I know. But why would you call your boy Marion? Unless you wanted to grow up like a hard bastard cowboy, which he did, strangely enough.
Well, with a name like that, you'd have to be a bit of a hard bastard, because you'd be fighting your way through school.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe was just what would you call it? You know, just what do you call it these days? So he was searching for a different gender or something. I don't know.
I you know what, I'm getting to a point where I'm interested in monitoring geopolitical events.
Yeah.
But out and kind of the rest of it I'm staying out of.
Yeah.
Because
I'm quite right. Quite right too, mate. Quite right too.
In this day and age, I mean, just being UK residents, we do still have a modicum of freedom of speech, but we all have to be increasingly careful about what we say and think in public, particularly on the internet.
You know, and we did start the kind of show on this kind of line, but I think Elusif actually is right, because he says no, we don't, and I think there is a line now being drawn in the sand here, and I think if we do not stand up for it and cross that line, then the line's just going to get pushed more and more and more.
I'm not saying we don't cross the line. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that we have to be careful.
Yeah.
And that we have to use language deliberately and carefully, and in a way, and in such a way that is not going to be, that can't be misinterpreted or misconstrued.
Yeah.
And you just have to be careful. I mean, the main thing that we have to be careful about is inciting anything of any description. But I mean, just looking at the Rhodes scholarships, because it's not just Americans to start with. There's Australians that have been Rhodes scholars.
Yeah.
There's again, I don't want to start reading out names, but there's plenty of additional research for people who are interested in this stuff. Like I said, if you are, then the place to go next is James Corbett's website and look up that World War I documentary. But just to give people a little bit of an idea about the Rhodes scholars, is that each year about 100 young scholars, like university students effectively, are selected through a really opaque...
Nectaritas gives us £10. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And the thing is that they're chosen based on weird things like leadership potential, and also ideological compatibility. But I also think that if you look at people like Bill Clinton, and you actually look at some of these people who have been Rhodes Scholars alumni, effectively, they all kind of follow a similar pattern, which is very Bill Clinton-y, by which I mean of loose morals and of a particular mindset where, for example, they're not so interested in pesky things like the US Constitution, if that gets in the way of their overall power and the aims of the group. And ultimately, the aim of Rhodes's will was to bring the United States back into the British Empire. Now, one could argue that
it never left.
Well, is the United States really as independent as
Well, I tell you
it
what, mate.
thinks?
I tell you what, and we'll dig into this in a little more tomorrow night,
Sure.
right? And we'll dig into what Janet's just brought up, the Burnley stuff, and we'll probably dig into that tomorrow night to a degree as well. But recent events, I think, have shown us that maybe there's still life in the old dog yet.
Which old dog?
The British Empire.
No.
No, I think
No, we're done.
no, I know we're done, but I think maybe maybe we're not, right? And
Well,
I think
our political class.
I think
Go on.
I'm not talking about our government, right? I'm talking about the figures behind it. I'm talking about the people that work in shadows, like 6 and 5 and civil servants and all that, right? There's still an old boys network going on there. And there's still influence being applied across the world. And I'm not convinced that our politicians are privy to it all.
I'm sure they're not. In fact, I would think that they're absolutely not. They're I mean, if you look at Starmer, that's kind of why I think they wanted him, because he's even more of a puppet
He's a
than
puppet,
the previous
yeah.
ones, frankly.
He's
And
not
I mean,
even a puppet, mate. He's a muppet. The guy's
that's
a
why I
muppet.
replaced his head with a muppet's
I mean,
head.
literally, he's just a tool.
Mm.
He really is. He was made as a tool, and he's fulfilling the function.
Absolutely. And I mean, he's as much part of, because the Rhodes scholarships, this is where they bring these young, it's almost like a really important version of Klaus Schwab's Young Global Leader program.
Yeah, it's like
Whereas Klaus Schwab's program is for the puppets.
Yeah.
But the Rhodes Scholarship is for the ones who actually then end up being president of the United States, or defense secretaries, or important people in business. And because these scholars, effectively, it's Americans that then they come to study at Oxford.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're then introduced into the upper echelons of British society and indoctrinated into that particular Oxford method of thinking. And when you look at a lot of the recent, I mean, particularly the Rona, all of that, there's so much relating to the whole COVID thing that came out of Oxford University, that it's almost like all Rona roads lead back to Oxford in a way. And that is the heart of the Rhodes scholars as well. So you have this, it's almost, it's almost indoctrination for rich people or something, because these people, they make contacts, and then they know what's expected of them. This is the thing, that when you're someone like Bill Clinton and you're a Rhodes Scholar, you don't necessarily even have to be told certain things. You just come to understand that this is how things are done, and there's certain things that you can get away with.
Look, think about it. Right, think about it for a minute, right? When you're standing there, right, with your cock in a pig's mouth, right? Does it not occur to you at one point that someone's going to come back to you and go, you know what, Dave? You've got to do this for us, or this is going to come out.
That's how the whole thing works. I mean,
Exactly.
I thought we'd all established with the whole Epstein thing and the Savile thing. And I mean, you could see it in action in Germany not that long ago, where, I don't know if you remember, but for a day or two, there were stories floating around about Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, and this African gigolo who made this video about her liking a bit of the black stuff, and essentially paying for him to travel when she went to Africa.
Yeah.
And
then
the story disappeared.
Remember the Finnish PM?
Yeah. But
we are cocaine fueled parties and all that.
Oh yeah, what's the face? But the thing is, with those, I think what happens is that the person in question starts to maybe go off the reservation a little bit.
Yeah.
And they have to be reminded,
They have to be
not so
reined
gently,
in.
that they are owned, and they
Yeah.
better get back on the bloody reservation and do what they're told, or their entire career and reputation and everything is done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's the really rich ones. Because I mean, if you look at De Beers is an interesting company because there's there's a connection with the Oppenheimer family, which was the family that started Anglo American, and De Beers and Anglo American they're almost like conjoined twins that they basically own each other, or they
Yeah.
own majority shares in each other,
Yeah.
and they're both controlled by the same group of unbelievably wealthy South Africans. And I mean, the name Anglo American was only chosen because they thought that Anglo African was made it sound a bit too primitive, because basically they're all racist bastards. Um, and I mean, it's one of the world's largest mining companies. De Beers controls the world's diamond market pretty much single-handedly. And we've got the Rhodes Scholars. And if you actually look, as I said, I mean, you've got the Council on Foreign Relations. They're not just,
Mhm.
it's not just one or two people that are in positions of power. It's an entire mindset that is controlling these networks, which in turn are effectively dealing us the cards that we're being dealt by the bastards in power. And Starmer is just as much a part of that. I mean, Starmer, as far as I know, he's not a Rhodes Scholar, but he's a member of the Trilateral Commission,
Yeah.
and the Trilateral Commission is of that same ilk, because
Uh-huh.
you have these meetings. It's called the Chatham House Rules because of the Royal Institute for
Yeah.
International Affairs, which is a precursor to the CFR. The CFR was based on the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and they have this thing called the Chatham House Rule, which is when you're in a meeting, that after the meeting you're free to talk about what was discussed in the meeting, but you're not allowed to attribute it to anyone. You can't say who said what.
Yeah.
You can discuss what was said, and that's a rule that is applied to almost all business meetings that I've ever been to, and it's particularly when it's gatherings of people who want to feel free to talk about stuff. I mean, Bilderberg meetings and Trilateral Commission meetings, round tables, it's all these secret groups, and Rhodes is a progenitor of an awful lot of that stuff, particularly where it relates to the British Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff, I mean, if you look at what's happening with Russia, the British government has been one of the main protagonists in the whole
Yeah.
West versus Russia thing,
Yeah, of course it
to a
has.
psychotic level. I mean, we're taking it now to World War III levels of crazy, where they want to start. Starman flew to America to try and get permission to fire missiles. Oh yeah, let's start World War III with the Russians. But that's
Yeah.
it's that
And
segment that can't get rid of the British Empire.
Yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow, I think, because
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to go off. I mean, I'm
some
basically done with the presentation now.
Yeah,
anyway, so.
there's some good stuff in there. Some good stuff in there about that. And it's, I'm kind of glad that somebody in America woke up, to what was actually about to happen. Because
From
I think
what I've been hearing,
if Blinken and that other, what's that other clown, Jake Sullivan, if Blinken and Sullivan had their way, we'd either be glowing or we'd be in dust by now, mate.
well, this is the thing that I find hilarious about, well, one of the many things I find scarily hilarious about the American government is that the State Department, which is supposed to be the diplomats, are all warmongers, and it's actually the military who are doing the talking, because the only reason I think that what happened was that Starmer flew over with Blinken to get permission off Biden to use these stupid missiles.
Yeah.
And it was the military. And I don't know whether it was Lloyd Austin or Jake Sullivan, Lloyd Austin via Jake Sullivan or whoever, but it was the military that went to Biden and said, no,
Austin.
We can't do this.
It was probably actually
to do it as well.
The information that I'm led to believe was it came from someone else, but Austin agreed with it, and took it to Biden.
Well, that would make sense
yeah.
because Austin he's a figurehead.
Thick as shit.
Mm.
I
But
mean,
I think someone was listening to Putin when he gave that little talk outside the Hermitage where he said, "Look, it's
of
going to be
course.
World War III."
I mean, that's the CIA's and the NSA's job, isn't it? I mean, they're supposed to analyze absolutely everything, and they should know, even from just look. Well, all you need to do is look at Putin, and you know when he's serious and when he's not. You know when he's joshing around. When he gave what's his name, Tucker, the 1 hour history lesson that we really didn't fucking need. You know. When he gave him that, it was like you could see he was just pulling him along, you know what I mean? But when he sits down and gives those speeches where it's like all fucking business, there's no mullet involved here. It's all in the front, you know. You know that he means business, and you know that you're either gonna have to put up or shut up. And for some fucking obscure reason, Starmer thought he could put up.
Well, this is what's really scary about the new prime minister is that he just doesn't. I mean, because from what I've heard, there's a great interview that I think it was the Duran, Alexander Mercouris and Alex Christoforou did an interview with Ian Proud, who's a former British diplomat.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys should check out that video if you're interested in the whole Ukraine thing, because particularly from a British angle. Because apparently even the Foreign Office people, civil servants and stuff, were saying to Starmer, no, we can't do this. It's a bad idea. This is going to be World War III. The Russians have got their lines, and this is one of them, and we can't fight them. We've barely got any military. But Starmer seems to he's like, I don't know. He seems completely hell bent on provoking something with Russia, and it's not in our national interest. It's not in the US national interest. It's not in anyone's national interest. It's not in internet. I mean, it's not in Russia's interest. It's not in Ukraine's interest. It's insane. I mean, what's in Ukraine's interest and everyone else's interest is to make peace with the Russians, turn the bloody gas pipes back on, and stop with all of the net zero nonsense. But that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now. That was Cecil Rhodes.
No, you're right.
If people are interested, like I said, go to James Corbett, watch his World War I video. And there's actually a really good article that Matthew Ehret wrote on Unlimited Hangout that someone sent me just before the show. Rhodes Scholars guiding. Yeah, this goes into much more detail about the Rhodes Scholars that are involved in Biden's presidency. So
yeah,
there's loads of material out there.
So
if you go to Unlimited Hangout and do a search for Rhodes, you'll find it.
So just going back to South Africa and some of the history of it, what was the whole Zulu thing around? You know, when Rocks Drift and all that, was that part of the Boer War, or was that just some kind of incident that went awry?
No, the Zulu Wars, but that was separate because when the
right, so they were actually just fighting the Zulu. The British were fighting the Zulus at that point. Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah, it was a war between the British and the Zulu, which was in eastern South Africa, what's now around the Transvaal, and
so before
where Durban is, and
before the Boer Wars.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean because the Zulu were actually migrants as well. They were because Bantu people from Central Africa.
My understanding, right, and I may be wrong, but my understanding was that South Africa was pretty much uninhabited when the Boers moved in.
No, well, there was the San Bushmen.
Right, okay, but they weren't farming.
But there was not many of them at all.
There was a few nomadic groups, but so I think the statement kind of stands. It was pretty much uninhabited, when they moved in. And like you say, the Zulus came down from the north, and the Boers were already there, and thought, how did these guys get so white?
Well, the Zulu. It's fascinating because they had a king called Shaka who was quite unusual.
Shaka Khan.
he was Shaka Zulu.
Oh.
And I mean, he was brutal,
Yeah.
but at the same time, he organized the Zulu kingdom in a way that nobody had up until that point. And he actually created a really powerful army that ended up conquering land all the way up to Zimbabwe. The Ndebele tribe in Zimbabwe is actually very closely related to the Zulus.
Mhm.
And the capital of Zimbabwe is now Harare, but one of the main cities, and I think it was the capital of Rhodesia, but that actually means Bulawayo. And that was
What was the
Bulawayo was
capital of Rhodesia?
uh,
The
Salisbury.
Salisbury, right? Okay. Because
But
Rhodesia was
I'm not sure.
Rhodesia was pretty big, wasn't it? They cover.
Well,
Does
I
it not
think
cover like 2 African states now? You know, Zambia and was it Zambia and
well, it was the Federation of Rhodesia and
Zimbabwe?
Nyasaland. Well, the original political entity was the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland, which
Yeah.
was after the British left. It was kind of a bit similar to South Africa, but that was comprised of what's now Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi.
Yeah.
Malawi being the Nyasaland part.
So I was just gonna show people, and I think sometimes people, and if I'm patronising the audience, you know, please let me know. But I think sometimes people don't understand just how big Africa is, right? Because I always like this slide because there's the United States in brown, right? There's France. There's what's that? Spain. So there's Portugal, Spain, and France across the top. And that little bit at the very top there is Great Britain. And then there's what's next? What's that? Germany. And then Italy. You can see the boot of Italy and all that. And this is Eastern Europe. So that'll be your Ukraine and all the Balkans. Yeah. And then we've got India. I mean, look at the size of India compared to Africa. It's tiny. And then there's China down here, right?
So if you look at Southern
Japan.
Africa, which
it's ginormous.
it's basically half of China, and I mean the area that Rhodes conquered, when you put it in this perspective, that the Cape to Cairo slide that I showed you guys earlier on, it puts you'd think, well, because he didn't actually make it all the way to Cairo. It's slide. Well, there's two. There's slide 8, which shows you Rhodesia.
Cape to Cairo, right?
And if you look the next slide down, that's Rhodesia there.
Yeah, got you.
With Nyasaland on the end.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's a fair size, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean Zambia in itself is the same size of most of Western Europe.
Yeah.
And if you add Zimbabwe on there, then that's easily Western Europe. Probably a little bit of Eastern Europe as well.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people. I mean, as you say, it wasn't completely not populated, but it's sparsely populated. And the problem is that Rhodes, we have to think of this also from an African perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of people who were displaced.
Yeah.
And Rhodes helped establish he helped establish the segregation / apartheid system in South Africa.
Did he? I didn't realize that.
Well, no, I mean, he wasn't. He died long before apartheid was put into place formally.
Yeah.
But that idea of dispossessing the native population, I mean, he actually put rules in place, which meant that you had to have a certain amount of money to be able to vote, which effectively cancelled the vote for large numbers of people, most of them Africans.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he did what he did in a way that wasn't in harmony with kind of, I don't know.
He was a product of the times, wasn't he? I mean, if you think about it, Britain did much the same in India. They did a lot. They did much the same in China. I mean, Britain's been a colonial
power. That's what they wanted
to
do to Russia as well. That's the whole point. I mean, if you hear the Kaya Kallas, the crazy person that's going to be European foreign warmonger can't. I mean, she's not really in charge of diplomacy, although she's supposed to be. I don't think she's got a diplomatic bone in her body.
Is this Finnish? Is she Finnish or something?
Estonian.
Estonian.
And she said,
She's
she says,
nuts.
"Oh no, we think Russia should be broken up," and that's exactly what they want to do. They just want to break it up, exploit the resources.
Yeah, I know.
You'd have these rapacious mining companies and stuff that will go in, and you can be guaranteed that Anglo-American and De Beers would be salivating over the idea of being able to get their hands on Russian gold and diamond mines. And
well, it's not just that. They've got so many rare earth minerals as well that nobody else has.
Absolutely.
Them in China are like ripe for exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I think those days they're kind of in the past now.
We're done.
We can't really do that.
Even
and
the
I
US
think
is done.
Well, I think it is, and I think Putin's shown us that to a big degree, really. So,
but the thing is, there's no reason why
we can't work together.
The only reason that any of this stuff is happening is because there's a small proportion of people that want domination and control over everything.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Chinese are building some of the most amazing bridges I've ever seen. The Russians are. I mean, if you look at some of the developments within Russia in terms of just the stuff that you hear about what life is like for people in Moscow, for example.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is it? China's lifted 100 million people out of poverty in the last 20 years or something crazy like that.
Okay.
I mean, why
that's a tiny percentage of their population. But anyway,
yeah, but it has knock-on effects.
Yeah, okay.
For everybody.
But I mean, I find China's an enigma to me. It really is, because it goes from one extreme to the other. It goes from the worst excesses of capitalism to the worst excesses of communism in one country. I mean, it's a
big country. I mean,
and
it's a very old country as well.
But you have such a disparity with these special economic regions, and it's bizarre. I just find it bizarre.
But it seems like that disparity is actually getting less and less.
I don't think it is. I think it's.
And you? I mean, I've never been to China, so I can't say from personal experience.
I think one of the problems with China is as well is that it's very, very good at controlling the information that comes in and out of it, and you get get stacks of people on YouTube, right, who are basically Chinese shills. They'll travel to China and they'll give you all this spiel because it's endorsed by the CCP and they're saying the right things and they're getting paid by China. And I mean, I don't think that's a conspiracy theory. That's just what these people are doing. And, fair play to them if they want to do that. But they're painting a picture of China that doesn't necessarily exist. And I think you got a lot of people holding China up as an example of where you should be going. And then when you actually dig into it and you look at the social engineering that's going on underneath it, the shaming. And the thing is, there's a lot of things they do in China that don't work in the West, because like shaming people, for crossing the road, that doesn't work. I mean, if you put my face up on a billboard and say jaywalker, I'd be like, hey, I'm on a billboard. I mean, you'd be the same, yeah. Nobody gives a fuck here. You can't shame people like they do. You can't shame people like they do in China, right? Well, so we have a completely different culture.
Yeah. I mean, the point I'm trying to make is less about... I'm not saying that we should try and emulate China, and I'm not saying that China or Russia or anywhere is the best place in the world live to.
But some of the people are trying to emulate China. Some of the people in this country. Because the control mechanism is what they want. They want the Chinese control mechanism.
Yes, I agree with that. The point that I'm trying to make is that we should be building and not blowing things up.
Well, yeah. I mean, nobody can argue with that. It's an eminently sensible statement.
Well, so why aren't we doing it?
Because let's talk about that tomorrow night. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Oh,
anyway,
I hope we've done an hour and 20 minutes. Well, we've done an hour and 10, I think. I think we started late, but I apologise for the technical hitch, but I think I know what to do now. I have to create a new room.
How long have you been doing this?
Well, not with this software, mate. I mean, we've only been, you think about it, how long we've been doing this software? Not long.
Months, maybe? Yeah, okay, fair point.
Yeah. So
Anyway, I hope people enjoyed Cecil Rhodes
yeah, I
and
hope they
that
did
little
too.
exploration. So yeah, that's me done.
Thank you, Ed. It's been great, and I needed a bit of a pick me up. I haven't had the notion of being on stream, because normally I would have went on last night and did a bit of a stream, as a kind of warm up for myself. But I think I'm back in the groove now. But watch this space, because I think diversity is key here, and I think we're going to go into more different channels. And if you don't follow me on Twitter and you're on Twitter, please follow me so I can get over the 500, because I really want to start putting stuff out on Twitter as well. I've got a brand new web series coming, and Ed's seen the research that's gone into it. The Cult of UFO. What's that like, Ed? It's like one of those mental.
Yeah, no, it's that meme of the guy with the cigarette standing in front of the board that has 100,000 bits of
Post-its,
string and post-its and pictures, and everything's connected together.
Yeah,
and he's standing there staring at the camera. That's you.
Yeah, it is absolutely mental. Yeah, I know Grok says nice things about me because I'm nice to Grok. No, I'm not. I treat it like a tool. I actually find that of all the AI things that I've played and dabbled with, I find Grok quite useful. I like Copilot because have you tried Copilot?
I love Copilot.
Right, but it's not as good as Grok.
The GitHub Copilot.
Oh, right. No, not GitHub. Just the regular Copilot that you don't need to pay for.
Well, the Microsoft one. No,
yeah, the Microsoft one.
The only thing
But there's one good thing about the Copilot on Microsoft, even the free one, you can talk to it. You can enable the microphone and you can go, Copilot, tell me about it. It's like living in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Do you remember when they go, computer?
Yeah, except it's connected to Windows and
yeah, I know, but it talks bollocks. My Twitter handle is at a collator. I'll see if I can put it in here. There you go. There's my Twitter handle. Oh. So yeah, no, you're quite right, Azzy. You're quite right. The AI fuckery, I think. But have you seen the before we go then? Have you seen the Apple's and cell phone video?
No.
Right, we'll dig into that tomorrow night then. Okay, because that's AI and it's quite interesting. Apples and cell phone.
Okay.
Okay, there's a treat for you coming tomorrow. So, for all you people out there, I'm going to sign out with an old outro. Don't follow the links on it because they don't. Well, they might work, but don't use them. Because one of them's Russian sponsored. Do you remember Subscribestar?
Yes.
People used to donate to us as Subscribestar. But hey. But thank you. It's as always been great for you.
That's all we've got time for this evening, so it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Stop playing with my bust!
Good night, everybody.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy.
You're a what?
A pianist!
Mwah! Good night, everybody.
You have been a delightful audience to talk. Good night. Thank you.
Oh, my bottom hurts. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob.
Oh, I did love that hamster so. I took it into bed with me every night, you know.
Good night, everybody.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think I have to go now. I've been standing here for a very long time. I think the end of the show must have come and gone.
There you go. That's our solar system.
You forgot Uranus.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you for listening. You've been very nice to work.
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.